In this video, I want to talk about the difference between a population and a sample. Right? This is a very important key concept when you are beginning to study statistics. Right? So a sample, the reason why we have the entire topic or the subject of statistics is because we are trying to understand how to use a sample to tell us something about a population. Right? So let's think about this using an example. Suppose I want to know what is the average height of adult Americans. Okay, so what is the average height of adult Americans? To identify a population, first thing you need to know is what is your question of interest. Once you know your question of interest, then you can start thinking about, okay, what data do I need to answer that question? What data do you need to answer this question of what's the average height of adult Americans? Well, ideally, you would have the height data for all adult Americans, right? So let me draw a box here. This is our population. Okay, so the population is a complete collection of all possible data, right? So we would have the heights of all adult Americans. Right. Can you imagine asking every single adult American, how tall are you? That would be nearly impossible to collect that data. And because that is nearly impossible, that is why we need to use sampling, right? So what is a sample? A sample would just be part of that population. So for example, I may ask 100 adult American heights. So 100 heights of adult Americans. It's really important that the sample is part of the population, right? So what I mean by that is I wouldn't include children in my sample, right? Because children aren't part of the population, they also shouldn't be part of the sample. Right? The sample needs to come directly from the population. Okay? So suppose I were to have done that, right? And I had 100 heights of adult Americans. I may have found that their average height was, I don't know what it might be, but let me just say 66 inches, right? This is including both males and females, right? So I may have the 100 heights, and when I take the average, I find that it is 66 inches. Now, does that mean that that's my answer? The average height of adult Americans is 66 inches? Well, it might be, but it may not be, because I didn't collect data on the entire population, right? And that is the key to understanding statistics. This sample is a random sample, right? And we can talk about different types of random sampling here in the future, but for the purpose of this, very intro video, it's just to understand that this number is not what the population average is, right? If I were to go out and collect a different sample of a different 100 heights, right? There's no reason to believe that the average height for these this next sample, right? If it's randomly taken from the population of adult Americans, it could be 67 inches, for example, right? Because it's just randomly collected from that population. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with these samples, that they disagree with each other. It just means that they are different people, different 100 people from the population. Samples are random from the population, right? And that's a very important key concept of statistics that we will continue to discuss throughout your study of statistics. Okay, so most important takeaway here is that populations are all, right? You see the keyword all. It's basically a complete collection of all possible data, and a sample is part of that population, right? And hopefully it's a random part of that population.